Cheers, everyone. It is I, Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. Um, and this is another one of my comic book thoughts videos. I'm gonna do it in the countdown style with the super subjective ranking of the comics I read. These are comics from the past 2 weeks, I think, or maybe even a few go even further back. I'm not sure. Distribution still seems spotty, so I'm never quite sure if I'm getting all my comics. I guess I missed getting Savage Sword of Conan. I'm pretty upset about that. Hopefully, it shows up next week. Um, and there are other books that seem to come and go, and I'm like, "Whoa, where'd this come from?" Or what happened to that book? But anyway, that's a minor detail. Uh, I always like to say it's super subjective and based on my enjoyment, and part of that is because once upon a time I was a book reviewer here and there for some magazines and websites and newspapers, and a long time ago. But there you had to please your editors, first of all, and you also were trying to rank things in terms of their larger merit, right? I mean, you would also include enjoyment to it, but I don't want to be distracted by that kind of stuff. However, this stack of 12 comics um, gave me some pause here and there where I was like, am I? It's hard to untangle my perception that it's of a special literary merit versus my pure enjoyment of it, if that makes sense. I mean, normally that's pretty easy to parse out, but sometimes it's not. Of these 12, I enjoyed 11 of them. So in at number 12 was The Mummy issue 2. I expected to enjoy this. With issue 1, I got part of the way through it and realized, oh, this is done in kind of a different style than I normally get in American genre single issue comics from the comic book store, and more like looked more like visually like the graphic novels that were published directly in graphic novel form for middle readers that my daughter used to read. Um, so with this one, I was like, okay, now I'm adjusted. I know what I'm reading. It's not going to be like the other Universal monster ones in this series, but I just the art seemed dull to me. The coloring dull, which was surprising because the coloring's by Lee Lowridge, so I guess he was responding, I don't know, responding to the art and making the art color dull too. And the characters seemed flat, and I don't know. It just I don't mean to put it down so hard, but it's definitely not for me. And so even though it's only I think 4 issues, maybe 5 issues, I already asked them to remove it from my pull list, which normally for a mini series I would at this point keep it, but I just like, why should I spend time on this? Why should I spend money on it? That's another thing. I'm starting. I was going through a period of just not looking at the prices. I have my discount, getting them, but this was a $5 book. This was a in at number 11. Super Science was a 99-cent book. And I was like, whoa. And it's issue 0. So I thought, cool, I'll read issue 0 and maybe I'll put it on my pull list. And I did enjoy it. It's in this wacky world where suddenly super scientists, like comic book scientists, suddenly exist, where they can think up a wild super science idea and have it completely ready for production in 2 hours, like build a giant robot, the kind of thing Mr. Fantastic does. So people are doing it all over the place in here. And there are some fun aspects. There's this joke that it took me a while looking at it to realize this was a reference to the movie The Graduate, the woman who seduces Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, Mrs. Robinson. But it took me a while. I was like, that's a weird reference in the middle of this book. And it was, I mean, it was a weird reference. Um, so I would probably add this to my pull list or at least pick up issue 1. But then I found out this is a teaser for just a full graphic novel. This new company, or new to me company, The Lab, is publishing a series of graphic novels which I guess maybe, I don't know if all of them will be teased with a zero issue. And after the issue ended, there was then a teaser with a whole different section from what we just read from somewhere else in the graphic novel. And I don't know if this zero issue will be in the graphic novel. I assume it will, chapter zero, but maybe it's the prologue or maybe it's not going to appear in it. Anyway, it was kind of fun. The art was kind of good, and kind of, well, you'll see the art. The art was decent, and it was just fun to read, but it wasn't like the greatest thing in the world either. Like a lot of time was spent on sex jokes. They didn't show the sex or anything, but it seemed a little distracting from the main storyline. The cover is quite hilarious with these a flying cat chasing a flying mouse and other aspects of the cover. Anyway, I enjoyed it, but I don't know if I'll get the graphic novel. I would have enjoyed it more in individual issues, if that makes any sense. I don't know. Issue one of Lost Fantasy, I'm putting in at number 10. And even says giant size. It's an exercise issue. For $4 or $5, you get a lot of pages. So a lot better deal than the Mummy in terms of entertainment. And I enjoyed this. And I really liked the artwork, um, and the colors. Is there a colorist credited? I guess Luca Casalanguida is also the colorist. Um, it suffers from being a bit, it's like it's a slightly quirky fantasy situation, but just a slight variation. And if it were quirkier, it might be in the Hellboy range, but it doesn't quite go up to that level in terms of, at least in the first issue, interesting characters. So I'm not sure. I think I might have put this on my pull list in advance, so I probably will be reading at least issue two. I'm not sure if I'm in it for the long run or not, but it certainly seems fun. These kind of swords and monsters fantasy stories in comics outside of the barbarian realm sometimes work for me and sometimes don't. So I'm just not sure. And often they don't make it long enough. Like a high fantasy kind of story needs a long runway, so to speak. This one also included like a preview at the end, and I'm getting a little bugged by these previews. So Into the Black is the name of chapter one of Lost Fantasy, and then something else starts up, and I thought, well, maybe this is more of Lost Fantasy, because the art looks similar, and I'm reading along, and eventually realize, no, I don't think this is. And then you get to the final page and learn it's something called Indigo Children. It doesn't even say, coming in March or whatever. Maybe it's a backup story. Maybe it's a preview. It didn't. It didn't have any impact. Like I couldn't really figure out what it was about. It felt like just a few random pages from a story. Um, but I would love it anytime they have a preview or even a backup story. Have a page here saying, and now a preview of coming in June, or and now or backup story called X by X. The credit page at the end in just small type there. Anyway, it's just kind of confusing. It's just a slight bugaboo. I enjoyed Out of Alcatraz and put it in at number 9. Um, it's funny, this cover is such a squiggly sketch. Did I end up getting a cover B or something? I don't even see. No, it's cover A, but it's not at all, it's not nearly as fully developed as the interior art. I love Tyler Crook's art. I think this is not, it's getting windy and the comics are blowing around. This is not um my favorite of his work, not because he's not doing a good job, but it's just uh less visually interesting things for him to do. Although he does have a good style for sort of recreating, I guess, what is perhaps the 1940s. um I think it's the 1940s. But anyway, and I guess it relates to the movie about Alcatraz, which I've never seen. So it feels like a good crime comic. There was a while ago where tons of crime comics were coming out, and I guess I'm still recovering from that. I mean, the very best of them were the Criminal series by Brubaker and Phillips, and there were lots of other good ones. And I'm enjoying this. I think I'll continue with it. And then in at number 8, I enjoyed even more The Flash, Absolute Flash, number 2. Again, really good art, really good color. I probably can't find the credits quickly. Darn it. Love this double page spread. Um, the story goes by really quickly. It's really this is a word that I always have trouble summoning up in my brain. Decompressed. The story is very decompressed, which is a style that is slowly going away. I feel like comics aren't super compressed again, but they're a little less decompressed than they were like a decade ago in the mainstream of comics. But this feels like that kind of thing. So uh, there's still uh, like this by the end of issue 2, like there's a cool reveal at the end, but we still don't know. I don't think we still don't know what really happened in the laboratory that created this absolute flash. But anyway, there's lots of cool elements, and I'm really enjoying this book. And a big surprise for me, I went ahead and got Godzilla and Spider-Man essentially on the recommendation of Rockin' Robbie at Pop Culture Philosophers. Either this week or last week, it was his number one, his pick of the week. And I had read Fantastic Four versus Godzilla and was very disappointed in that. This one gives you much more of the classic old school Spider-Man. Um, and we go back to the era when he obviously this is an elsewhere continuity, but we're in the era where he was very early on in having the black costume. And that plays an important role. I don't want to spoil too much, but an important role in what's going on with Godzilla. So, part of me is now tempted to pick up some more of these Marvel Godzilla books. This was quite a fun read, and it was $5, but it was also a little not, not nearly as good of a bargain as The Lost Fantasy, but gave you some extra pages, so a better bargain than The Mummy, although The Mummy does have the cardstock cover. I don't know. Speaking of mummies and monsters and Godzilla, there is the comic Monsters by Mark Spears. I don't know what cover I got. I think this is the cover A, and I know there's tons of covers, and if I were wise, I would figure out which cover to pick up that was later going to be worth a lot of money. But anyway, I really enjoy this. I'm a little weirded out by the art that looks like at times looks like doctored photographs, at times looks like a painting. Um, but there's something really cool about the pacing of this comic, and it jumps around in space and possibly in time to a degree. Um, but I feel like I'm following it enough, even though Mark Spears doesn't say meanwhile or before or earlier. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't tell you anything. You just have to figure it out. But he does it well enough that I feel like I'm following a bunch of different threads of the story. My only real complaint about this comic is it's not coming out too frequently. I think it's like every 2 or 3 months. And so I need to go back, I guess, and read the other issues. And the other question is, I forget, I heard someone say how many issues this is going to be. I'm guessing like 10. Will all the threads come together in the final issue? Until that happens, I guess I can't tell you if I loved this or not, but I feel like I'm gonna love this. um, so in a way, should I rank this higher? I don't know. I left it there. Um, then we've got The Last Day, Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor, the third and final book in the Black Label series. Um, it's only Black Label in the sense that it's an Elseworld. I don't think there's any particular adult content to it, the way originally I thought Black Label was going to be. Um, it's not gory or particularly horrific or have any language or adult situations. But anyway, it's Mark Waid teamed up with Brian Hitch, whose art I absolutely love. And he's a wonderful superhero artist and a wonderful artist for other things. Because there's another book drawn by Brian Hitch in this very same pile. Um, it's interesting how throughout this series, Mark Waid is examining Superman and his way of being and not wanting anyone to die, not killing anyone, um, sort of his forgiveness in a sense and belief in everybody. Mark Waid keeps exploring it from different angles with the conflict between um, Superman and Lex Luthor. Sometimes he hammers it on the head a little too often, but I still appreciated it. And by the end of this issue, and I don't want to spoil anything, it very clearly is not any connection to the regular universe. At least, the way things wrap up could is not connected to anything that's happened in the past or the present of Superman regular continuity. I'm not explaining that very well because I'm trying to avoid spoiling things. I would say every time they had some super science thing with some super science explanation, I kind of groaned because that part was pretty bad, pretty dumb. Um, but that's probably because I've discussed too much physics with my daughter over the years. But anyway, a really fun for super. If you're a Superman fan, I'd say this is definitely one to get to pick up. So that was I'd put that at number 5. Monsters was at number 6. In at number 4 is Metamorpho, and this is Metamorpho issue number 5. I would say that the previous 4 issues of Metamorpho were huge favorites of mine. Were like one of my favorite comics that I'm currently reading, and I still really enjoyed this. But there was some cosmic stuff thrown in, and I feel like Metamorpho would be better not dealing with such cosmic stuff. I should have. I was so happy that Al Ewing, who likes to get super cosmic, was staying out of that realm for this Metamorpho, but he stuck some in here, and it didn't totally ruin it or anything. It's still very funny, still lots of classic old school writing. By old school, I mean 1960s style writing. Gaze in wonder as an all new and all non element an all now element team forms not merely to protect the earth, but to save Sol itself. But is even a freaky fivesome fabulous enough for this mission? Or worse, are there too many metamorphos? Anyway, um, that might not be the best example, but he still mostly the writer still mostly the writer Al Ewing mostly channeling Bob Haney, and the art is really funny too, and the coloring and everything. So anyway, still a favorite comic of mine, just not my most favorite issue of this miniseries. And okay, in at number 3, my most difficult one to play with this ranking game that I do, Assorted Crisis Events. This was 90% a brilliant act of storytelling, or see, there's the problem. Story, it is a story, but it's more in the kind of literary story that's a portrait of a situation rather than a development. And 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 it's done brilliantly, and it's a brilliant use of comic book art and comic books imagery in ways to give feelings and a new understanding about issues. And it's it covers a very sad life story. Um, so part of me wanted to rank it lower because in a way, like as I was reading, I thought this is really brilliant. And afterwards I was like, oh man, that this book has got me really kind of down and depressed. But maybe I should be from the issues it covers. Um, and in another way, it has that quality of Ice Cream Man. It's a one-shot story. Issue 2 has no connection to issue 1, which I wasn't sure how that was going to work after I read issue 1. But like in issue one, the last two pages had me confused. And in this issue, the last two pages have me a bit confused too as to what I'm supposed to think the conclusion of the story is. Now, it was a story that jumped around in time and is kind of a portrait of this person's entire life, a la the way sometimes Ice Cream Man does it. But I still, I didn't grok the last two pages. I just didn't quite get them. So it's not for me quite a masterpiece. I think again, Rocking Robbie thought it was like one of the best comics he's seen in years, and I completely understand why he said that. But I still didn't quite get the last two pages, and I'm starting to think that's part of the Dennis Camp way, that he maybe likes a certain kind of vagueness or elusiveness, or at least his way of expressing things is vague and elusive to me in its final moments. So there's lots of cool stuff, lots of powerful stuff, but then this touch of vagueness I can't quite put my finger on. The art team is incredible. Eric Zwadzycki and Jordi Belair, the colorist, and also very nice lettering by Hatsam Atsame Eliyahu. Um, so yeah, it's a if you're just someone who likes different um, advanced literary uses of the comic book format, this is a particularly great comic. So it'll be interesting to see what issue three is going to be like, and can he keep up, the keep up the level of this, the way Sandman seems to keep up the level most of the time. In at number two, and I hotly debated which one should be number two and number one. In at number two, I'm making Absolute Martian Manhunter. Again, mind-blowingly good art. Another book written um, by Dennis Camp, and he is very good at these kind of character study. It has that character study thing. There's more of a plot here, of course, than in the independent book he's doing. Um, but he's extremely strong on creating character and mood. And then on top of that, he's teamed up with just this incredible artist, Javier Rodriguez. So, fantastic issue. And I think it the reason number well I'll talk about number one, but in a minute. I think it's the story is still just a birthing in issue two, kind of similar. There's a lot more meat on the bone here than in Absolute Flash, but similar to it, it has not advanced too far in letting us know what's really going on yet. I mean, we get a lot of clues. So Redcoat, number 11, came in at number one for me, on my little super subjective list, partially because Redcoat has built up my love for 10, now 11 issues. So I have more faith and trust in it than some of these other comics. And uh, everything that happens now in issue 11 resonates with all the good stuff that's been happening in the previous issues. And the last, what, three or four issues were one shot kind of stories, um, which gave us a bigger look at Redcoat's world and experience, i.e., that he's lived through most of American history, trapped on the immortal but trapped on the U.S. continent, and upping the stakes of everything, kind of having this semi-mythical American tall tale feel. And so now I feel very excited to go now back into a longer form story. So this is going to be a multi-issue story. I don't know how many, where Redcoat gets involved with this guy, the Northerner, and I strongly suspect some interesting things about him beyond him just being a black man in a union outfit. And yeah, I think we've got some interesting science fiction stuff involved with him. And so this is the second book drawn by Brian Hitch in the same month. And the other one was super long. Maybe he did that one in advance. I'm not sure how he's doing all of this, because unlike other artists, he seems to be able to stick to a regular schedule without any substitutes either. And he's got, art that looks like it took a long time to do. Anyway, so it was a very good week, but not really week because it's a mix of books from different weeks. But a good week of reading new comics for me. And I have a lot of other stuff where I've got now 3 or 4 issues that I haven't read, say, for instance, Absolute Wonder Woman. So I need to catch up with a bunch of stuff that I've been hoarding in the new comic realm. So thanks for sticking with me. And I'll be back soon.